It's rare these days. It is. It's rare these days, given like how many mega raid bosses I've killed on the hardest difficulty, the games that we've challenged ourselves to and pushed through, to have an encounter that really challenges you to not to like the max of your gameplay, but forces you to dial in and just be in the game itself and overcome it and get that victory. Get that victory where you just... you don't even know how to react to it. Like, it's almost like a shock. It's just a shock that happens to you. And then combine that with more twists and turns than you've seen before. And then having to deal with that on the fly. And that is exactly what happened. And many of you knew it was coming as well. The only person who didn't, seemingly, after I rewatched the clip and my chat reaction to this, is me. It's me. I didn't know. Oh, man. So, welcome back to Monster Hunter World, where I can officially announce that Brackers is dead. Brackers is dead. He has been defeated. He has been squashed. How do I describe this? I was not nervous about this. I always know we're going to win. Like, the path to victory is ahead. But I was so confused, as you probably saw in the TDP yesterday. How do we get there? Because I said at the end of my last sort of like a few hours of trying this boss, is like I felt insane. I was like, what I'm doing just isn't working. And the way I like to play this game, as I have done for the last 150 hours or so, does not work here. It just flat out doesn't work. This is a difficulty leap for me personally, because I imagine, in a lot of ways, this boss wasn't too hard for some people, and then another boss that I maybe one-shot or something was very hard for some people. That is a very classic thing in these types of games. But this was my Achilles heel, right? This was my Achilles heel so far. There might be more coming up. I don't know. I don't know where we are. We'll get there in a second. But it was tough, right? The final result was 35-1. 35 tries. 35-1 was the final score as recorded by my chat versus this. I think we're going to try and put together like a wipe list to gauge like where the wipes were on this one. But I kind of want to talk through the encounter a little bit, certainly for those of you who don't know how this fight works. So on the face of it, what makes this fight so hard? Like, what is it that makes this fight so hard? Because this is an enemy this is an advanced version of a different enemy. It's not a new enemy that you meet quite early on in the Iceborne DLC, and I one-shot it. It's not like it's new. Now, it was tough, but it's not unsurprising when you're first meeting a brand new style of enemy that enemy comes across quite tough, but you overcome it regardless. The big thing with this enemy that makes it so awkward is two things. Extremely erratic movement. Very erratic, which means it's very, very hard outside of select windows. Now, when I say a window, I think a lot of my World of Warcraft subscribers or FF14 subscribers, MMO players, will consider something like a 10 to 15 second period where you pop all your DPS cooldowns and you plow into the boss because it's doing some sort of... It's either being tanked, it's not doing anything, or it's doing a long animation. That's very common in raid environment. When I'm talking about a window here, I'm talking about a second. That's it. Just a second. And it's usually at the end of some rampage, right? Which then leads you into a very weird scenario where if you get hit during that rampage, which is very easy to have happen, then you can't utilize that window. You have to heal up because it's going to rampage again. This is the only time you've got to drink a potion or something like that to get back into it before it all starts again. And very often that will chain react into... You only have this second, and if it decides to do a certain attack after that, then it's going to hit you because it can jump straight to you and just swipe the whole area. So that's problem number one, the very erratic movement. And the second thing is the sheer range of its attacks, particularly when it's got its explosive elements. So if you'll notice while you're watching, sometimes its arms and head and tail are yellow, but very regularly they are red. And when they are red, that means that every time it utilizes that body part for an attack, it will include with it either one or many explosions. It's now explosively charged. And that explosion can wreck the whole area, and he can leap and do it and just fill the area with explosions and things like that. So that means that you have to make choices in this game that you don't make elsewhere. And it's painful. It's really painful to make those choices. So for example, if you do manage to knock him over, which in every other encounter in the game so far, I mean literally all of them, of which I've killed, I don't know, maybe 200 monster fights, that gives you a great opportunity to like work on the head, work on a weakened body part, something like that, and put in a huge amount of damage. That's a real DPS window where the bosses lay down for the duration of a full combo, which can be 10 to 12 seconds. You can't do that with this boss, because if he's explosively charged, the way you remove that explosive charge is either by hitting it with a ranged weapon, which can be very difficult because of the erratic movement of its hands and body, or by just DPS. And it only takes like 1 or 2 hits. It's actually not hard to remove the explosive charge. However, that comes with problems. When you remove an explosive charge, let's say you hit the hand, and sometimes this will be 1 hit, sometimes it's 2. That's it. It drops off the body part. So if you hit the arm while it's explosively charged, you hit it once, sometimes twice, it will drop a pool on the floor, which almost immediately explodes. Now what that means is once you go into a combo, this is an animation lock game. So when you press the button to attack, some of the times pressing that one button is 2 swings of the weapon. That's too much. You're going to blow up. And not only are you not getting that DPS window, but you're also knocked back and take significant, like 60 to 70% of your HP in damage, which means then that needs healing up, which then puts you back on the back foot again. So how do you solve this problem? And this is very apparent during the kill. I suggest you watch the whole kill because you'll hear me talking through my mindset here. Is there were various occasions where it's like, this is a big DPS opportunity. I can't attack the head or the arms because I'm looking at it. I'm like, the head is explosively charged or one of the arms is, and that's going to stop me being able to DPS it. So I'm actually going to opt to DPS, say, the tail, which takes decent damage, especially if it's weakened. Nowhere near as much or as effective as somewhere else. But if I know that if I DPS there, we're probably going to run into a situation where I have to end the combo early to dodge out because I've knocked something off, or I'm going to get hit, and I'm not going to get that damage out. So you're constantly in this ebb and flow because sometimes you can attack that window and it works. Sometimes you'll attack that window and you'll know this might cause one of the weapon swings due to the way the hitboxes are constantly in motion. You can see your sword sometimes swing through an arm and hit the back arm, and that explosion will drop. And you're like, well, I'm screwed now. And you know, that's the weird thing about this fight is you know sometimes almost 20 seconds before it happens that you're dead. Because you can see the whole routine play out, especially after you've done a lot of tries on it. He's like, you can see the effort. I talked about the knockback punch wombo combo. That one it can do very regularly, where it just punches you, it knocks you back and takes a good 67% of your HP, but then it CCs you on the back end, and then it leaps at you and follows it up. So you can't get up. You just nothing you can do. So it turns, I followed my own advice. So how did I approach it? I followed my own advice that I talked about on yesterday's TB. Is like, I have way more time than I'm giving it credit for. These fights last 50 minutes and did do for me earlier in the game. Well, we were crashing out completely at like the 12-minute mark. I have like 5x that amount of time to chill. Take it easy. Wait for those windows of opportunity. Instead of trying to hammer it, which I can do with most of their enemies, we're going to have to like tickle it. And I'm going to weaken more body parts than what I've been used to. Because I've been very focused on taking down the explosions, which you do need to do. But sometimes, because they're so weak, that'll happen kind of incidentally. So you'll like line up to hit a leg and you'll swing, but because of his erratic movement, he'll actually swing his arm in front of you. And you'll just randomly be like, in that time you've taken to press a button and cause a swing, he's turned a full like 90 or 180 degrees and you've hit a body part you didn't intend to, but you only pressed the button once. And that's what you've got to learn. It's like you just attack once unless you are absolutely certain that you can do more attacks. Because these different scenarios could play out. You might hit the body part you want to, and he doesn't do anything. So you could have done an extra swing. However, 3 out of 7 tries, it will actually do something that kills you. Like, it will hit and do an immediate charge right through you. Or it will turn in a certain direction and cause an explosion to drop. Or it'll turn in a certain direction and line up a punch. It'll do all these different things. So you've got to just be like, I'll hit it, and then I'll wait. Hit it, then I wait. And then when you have got these DPS windows, you really have to be like, okay, one arm is lit, it's on the back end, but based on where I am, can I get damage there? Do I want to work this, work that? Now, I was working through this and I wasn't doing well, but I was like, I just know we're getting better. And I did feel I was getting better. It definitely became more apparent to me that just staying in and not really attacking, but just focusing on dodging, trying to... a rule I placed was, if one of the arms is deactivated, you always dodge towards the deactivated arm, regardless of what's going on. So if his right arm's charged and his left arm is not, when he's coming at you, and he's doing some mad motion, you always dodge to the side that is deactivated, because that red side is going to just fill the area with explosions, and it doesn't matter how well you dodge, you're going to get hit, at least with the setup I had. I did change some things after yesterday's TDB. I swapped over to the Temporal Mantle, which auto-dodges you for like 4 or 5 times, something like that. That is great. It's really, really good here because you don't end up on that back foot where you're trying to heal all the time. It just gives you that window to be like, I can DPS here and get things done. The other thing I decided to do is, I don't know in this game, and I still don't know. I have theories, and we'll find out on Monday during the spoiler cast what exactly is happening, is how the immunity frames work, because it's certainly not like Dark Souls, right? It's certainly not like that. It's a very different system in place. But when you dodge, and it's certainly all your history is based on those kinds of Souls-like ARPGs like I played, you feel like when you dodge, you should be able to get out of it if you've done a perfectly timed dodge, which I'm very good at. Generally speaking, I'm very good. I'm very good at parrying. I'm extremely good at things like Bayonetta, witch timing things and things like that. I'm pretty good at my dodge timing, generally speaking. But often, in Monster Hunter, that doesn't work. So I was looking around, and I was like, there is this thing, and I keep getting these, like, immense flashbacks, for those of you who played it, of Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 suffered from a very weird problem that people recognized very quickly, is that their dodge roll, which will go through anything if you time it right, didn't seem to be working too well. Like, it did kind of work, but not like you were used to in 1 or Demon's Souls or something like that. And it turned out there was a stat, I actually forget what it was, it might have been Dex, something like that. But once you put, like, 20 points into Dex, you got your old dodge roll back, the proper one. And what they've done is intentionally nerfed the iframes on the dodge, and then people figured out, it's like, oh, it's because this stat actually boosts those iframes, so you want to get this minimum amount of stat in a Dex or whatever it is, and then you have the normal dodge roll, so the game plays like you would traditionally play it. Okay, now, I think it's called Evade Window or something like that. But this one has 5 tiers that says increases the immunity frames of the roll. So I know they exist. It says it in one of the things. And then the second tier is like greatly increases. And then it goes all the way to 5, which then like massively increases the immunity frames while rolling. So I was like, you know what? I'm having this massive issue of I feel like I'm doing perfectly timed rolls or very close to, and I'm just getting hit anyway. So I'm going to try this neck out. So I went and got that neck, which involved me killing like low rank Legiana, which was hilarious. I had to go back and just beat Legiana. I had to cut the tail off, which actually proved to be surprisingly difficult because my weapon hit so hard it was like dying before I could get the tail off, which was really irritating. I had to do the same as well with Kush. I had to go kill Kush, which was kind of funny. The one investigation I had, I didn't realize at the time, was a 15-minute limited investigation. And I needed to cut the head off and get a gem off it, which means you have to break the head. So that was like, I can't just bash this monster. I have to be quite specific to cut the tail off and work the head in order to do this. And I forgot who Kush was. And then I got a very quick reminder. It's like, oh, it's the wind guy whose final phase, he just spawns tornadoes everywhere, making it... And he has this wind pushback, which makes it very difficult to get into him, certainly to target specific body parts. But I did get it done. And I built this necklace, which gave me like level 3, I think, of the extension. I think it helped, but... the problem I had, which I think is a mechanic of the game, is I believe the immunity frames only work against physical strikes, like actually being punched or charged or something like that. from what I could tell pretty quickly, is it has zero effect on what I'll call environmental damage, but that's explosions, right? So the boss will punch you, that's the physical portion, and then it will set off an explosion. I noticed that it seemingly had no effect on that kind of situation. At least from what I could tell. It could have been badly timed rolls or whatever, but I was like, okay, I think it works here, it doesn't work there. Which then made me think, perhaps what I actually want then is, there's another one that makes your dodge go much further, but I was like, I'm not going to make another necklace right now. That's not going to happen. So I had my setup and got going. Needless to say, obviously I told you at the beginning, we did kill it. So how did that go? Well, how did that go? I had, typically what had been going on during my progress here is my phase 1, which I'll say is the first arena you fight in, had gotten worse and worse and worse. Because I was holding back various resources for its enrage, right? Because its enrage rampages are crazy. So I was like holding back the anomaly cloak. I was holding back my fireproof cloak for during these phases because like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get hit during this phase. So I was holding them back. And that led to some opportunities of the chip damage I talked about earlier. It's like there's lots of incidental damage that happens as he moves past you. You just get chipped down and chipped down and chipped down, and you had to heal that up. All those kinds of things. But I think I lost my recovery. You get to die once without the fight ending. I lost that, and I think I died again in P1. Like, I think I lost 2 of my lives before we even moved on to the other arena. But then that wonderful gamer mode happened, where you kind of just go into the zone, and you're just part of the fight now, because the fight is... I think I said something along the way down. It's like, it wasn't a great start, but it ain't over yet. Something like that. And we went down. And the fight started to proceed in a nice way. I was staying alive. I definitely got some real lucky opportunities where my cat occasionally tanked or he landed a heal at the right time. Sometimes he didn't do that. I had the same situation with the cat that I always have. Is like sometimes he's the savior and the hero. Other times he's doing the worst things imaginable and he's not responding to you and things like that. But the problem is with a fight with this much splash damage in AoE, I did notice my cat was constantly dead. Like, constantly dead. Because if it was near the boss and explosions going off, it would just die. So I can't blame the cat entirely. But it worked well. And then we got down to the penultimate arena, which is what I found out to be in the lava. Where I was doing pretty damn well. But I did get down to the point where if I died again, it was over. But we were proceeding. And you have, by this point, learned you're somewhere near death. You know, right? There's a certain amount of HP the bosses have. And you know how many big attacks you've done, like mounting it or wall crashing it and things like that. And you've done quite a lot of those now, and you're probably getting down to that point. And then it happened. The boss moved again. Now, it's pretty clear after you've done this many tries, like I have, there's a very set pattern to how this boss moves. It moves between very specific environments, probably at certain health thresholds. I would guess it's every 25%, something like that. I had never seen it go to its final room. And then it walked off, and I was like, oh my god. It's going to a different area. We've never seen this before. This is awesome. I was so excited. I was like, we're actually making progress. Like, we've actually pushed through this barrier. Because I'd been to the lava phase several times. But we're pushing through to something new. Oh boy. There's phase 2. A legitimate phase 2. I can't tell you how terrified I was walking into this. Because I went from this lava-filled, bright orange fire room with an explosively charged boss to a boss that was now pitch black and smoking in a room I had fought in many times. It's the slidey room is what I call it, and something weird was happening, and I was like, oh my god, this is another phase of the fight. I felt like I'd been black flame freeded. For those of you who've ever fought that boss, I recommend it. It's good. And I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. There's an entire another fight to learn. And at that point, I kind of thought maybe I'm at 50% or something, and this is like a big, big encounter. And this fight did something. As soon as I walked into the room, it started tunneling into the ground and throwing lava everywhere. It's explosive goo. And I was like, oh my god. I was petrified. Petrified of dying. Because I noticed things happening. So I spent the first few seconds just avoiding, like, what is happening here? Because this boss was now spewing explosions everywhere. But they weren't going off immediately. They did hurt to stand in. So I just adopted the entire strategy of stay at full health, hit it when you can, which is what I'd learned earlier on. Do not stand in any of these pools. don't do it. Because then it roared and filled the room with explosions. And I was like, holy crap. And then it roared again and blew up the whole room. When I was stood in a safe spot, and I was like, oh my god, this isn't. And then it starts doing it again. It just fills the room with explosions. Now, I'm making this sound horrifying because that was my perspective. On reflection, this is actually the easiest phase of the fight because these explosions do not detonate until the roar, which actually happens like every minute or something like that, I think. And you have time. And he's weak at this point. He's actually very weak. All his body parts are pretty vulnerable. He's lost the ability to, like, charge his arms and head, so you can work him like a normal enemy. But that's not how I felt at the time. And my near 100 heartbeat, I have a resting heart rate of about 63 to 67. My heart is pretty damn good, man. I was up at 100 fighting this. Like, I was terrified, because any odd hit, he still hits hard. I was like, I need to heal. I need to heal. I was constantly surveying the room for a place to stand. To be not near the lava, like, okay, that quarter of the room is safe. We're just beelining it over there and getting away. You can kill this. I know you can kill this phase really quickly. I did not. And I was just, I can't die. And there were moments that I felt like a combo was coming where I was like, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. We're doing this. That moment we crossed the finish line. And it just said, mission complete. Because they also disable your ability to trap it at this point. Like, your traps just do not work in this room. I didn't even really react. It was more shock. I know as a streamer I'm supposed to start screaming and throwing my controller around and breaking something or whatever, but that's not me. I was just like, a mix of excitement, frustration, relief. I was physically, like, shaking. I could feel it. I could feel, like, you know, the adrenaline was just surging through me. And had been for a while, because I think I was in this last phase for like 5 minutes or something. The total fight length was like 22 minutes or something. And just not knowing as well, which was really weird, is like how the chat was reacting. But Chris came in. I heard Chris cheering from the other room. And he came in, he was like, dude, everyone is pogging out of their mind. They're so wild. I was like, oh, thank God. But then I opened the chat because, like, Chris was like, everyone's having such a great time. They're so happy you overcome this because they've been along for this journey. And all I could see when I'd open it, because I just put the controller down and was like this, was like, please carve the monster. I didn't care. It wasn't what was in my mind is to get the loot. It was just like, please carve it. For the love of God, carve the monster. I was like, oh, okay. So I had to like get back in game mode. And like, okay, I've got to carve it. I've got like 40 seconds left. So I carved it and I carved the tail. I got a couple of nice things. I got his armor seems pretty good. It's like when something is enraged, you do tremendously more damage. So if we encounter something that's enraged all the time, pretty good. I got some never-ending nuclear reactors or something from it. Something like that, which I got like 3 of those, which is apparently good. They gave me a new weapon, which was cool. I got a weapon with blast on it that does a lot of top end damage. That was really cool. Got that as well. And then the reality dawned on me. Is like, well, we ain't done yet, kid. We ain't done yet. And I was trying to settle down. I was trying to let the adrenaline run away because I was like vibrating. But that feeling, wow, great. And if there's more of that to come, I'm so happy and so excited for the next game as well. Next up was, though, again, back into it. Got to get ready. Going to Reggie. So I remember I've fought Reggie before. We've got Furious Reggie to do, the little monkey man. And so I was like, what does he do? And I was like, I know he's just like I remember him being just a big hulk of muscle. And so I've got to challenge this big hulk of muscle. So I kept my ability to get the iframes on physical. That made sense to me because he's very physical. I don't know if that's great or not. For all I know, the iframes are like 1/10 of a second and greatly increases them with like max rank is like 1/2 a second or less or something. I don't know. I don't know what the scaling is on it. It doesn't tell you. I'm very good. I'm very happy when I have accurate tooltips, so I don't need to like rely on the internet and spreadsheets to try and figure these things out. This wasn't too bad. I didn't kill it because we only had, I think I only got in like 3 tries before it was the end of the day. But compared to Brachy, I don't think we're going to have the same amount of difficulty. So mark my words on that one. He seems okay. There's a couple of attacks that he does, which I'm not sure how you're supposed to deal with, but considering you can kind of like, I think the gimmick that I found in the first 3 tries was like, you just stay close. His attacks becoming infinitely more deadly and hard to deal with once you move away from him. It seems like Brachy is like very anti-melee, whereas Reggie is more anti-ranged, is what it feels like to me. If I was to like put a scale on it, it feels that way. There's a particular attack when he's on his full rampage, because Reggie has 2 levels of enrage. He's got normal Reggie where he's not enraged. Then he gets enraged, and this one becomes lightning charged, where he can do some kind of nasty attacks, but then he has the full Reggie rampage, where his arms are now made of iron, and the gimmick is you're supposed to break their head. I think that is bait. I think that's bait. I tried a few different things, like even fully like pit trapping him and whacking away at the head, and I did like 4 or 5 big hits, and it still didn't break the head. And being in front of Reggie is just asking for him to murder you. He's just going to kill you. Like, being at the side or at his rear and working the butt cheeks is definitely preferable. And I think it's a case of you just ignore the fact that he's on his mega rampage and you just learn to deal with it. There is an attack, though, that really confuses me. I work under the assumption, and this is not necessarily correct, but that every attack an enemy can do is perfectly avoidable if you figure it out. That doesn't necessarily apply to Monster Hunter, because he could do, unless you are already pre-running and dive, there's no way I've seen, or he's targeting the cat, there's no way I've seen of avoiding one of these attacks, which is when he's in full rampage mode, he can leap into the air and do like a barrel roll on top of you. But this includes what appears to be a massively wide radius lightning explosion when he lands. I've been pre-running. He still hits you. I have tried to dodge it perfectly. Still hits you. And it does a lot of damage. It does a hell of a lot of damage. My only thought process after trying to figure this thing out is that I just don't see how you avoid this attack, is that you don't let him do that attack by staying close to him. This is the first fight where even after 3 tries, I've considered a couple of things. One, not bringing the cat. Because when Reggie is focused on something else, that's when he like gets away from you, because he can move across the arena in a split second. And that makes it weird. If he's attacking the cat, he becomes very unpredictable in what he's doing. Like, he's another enemy where if you flash him and disorientate him, he's more deadly than when he's behaving normally. I would only ever use that at this point to like buy myself a breather or something like that. I'll just flash him to give myself a second. And the other one is, it just feels just not too bad for me. That's all I would say. It feels not too bad. You can trap him, which is great, so there is opportunities to reset, although he's immune to lightning traps, so you only have 1 trap, which is a great way of nullifying one of the attacks, one of your traps, but still having that mechanic be useful. But ultimately, I don't think we're going to spend too long on this, so pay attention if I come back tomorrow and say Reggie is a nightmare. I am dreading, more importantly, a final phase like we had with Brachydios, where I had fought Reggie temporarily in the tight corridor that I fought Barioth in his final phase, and it's horrible in there because he's so fast and so wild. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is it's the only other time I've really considered using lock-on. I'm an old schooler who does not use lock-on because it's generally better not to. But he can jump over you and past you almost instantly and attack you from the other side. Manually moving the camera to see what he's doing is ill-advised. It's too slow. But lock-on is immediate. Lock-on will just keep him locked in. So I think it's going to be a combination of those things. It should enable us to just kind of dodge. He has some very, very obvious windows of DPS where he like belly flops and things. And you can just damage him through that. So I think that's probably going to be my strategy. We'll see if that works. And I'll report back tomorrow. But just know that I am riding a high right now. I am riding a high. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.